Layla Al-Harbi's smile lit up the ballroom, but behind that diamond-studded gown hid bruises no one dared to see. And by sunrise, her fairy tale marriage to Fahad al-Matari would turn into a blood-soaked nightmare that silenced an entire city. The Crime Scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. The wedding was the kind of spectacle that turned heads across Riyadh, an explosion of gold, flowers, and luxury so over the top it could have been pulled straight from a royal fantasy. Guests walked through marble halls lit by chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls, cameras flashing as the couple of the hour made their grand entrance. Layla Al-Harbi, the bride, shimmered in a custom diamond-studded gown that made every woman in the room jealous. Her smile looked flawless, but behind it sat something uneasy, a quiet sadness buried beneath layers of makeup and glitter. Her groom, Fahad al-Matari, played his part perfectly, smooth, confident, the kind of man who always got what he wanted. Together, they looked like a fairy tale, but fairy tales can be built on lies. Layla's friends whispered that she hadn't been herself for weeks. They'd seen faint bruises she brushed off as nothing. They'd heard the tension in her voice when Fahad's name came up. But in a world where reputation meant everything, silence was survival. Her family had pushed the marriage hard, calling Fahad a perfect match, the son of one of Riyadh's wealthiest businessmen. Layla didn't argue. She just nodded, smiled, and followed the plan. The night of the wedding, the ballroom glowed with fake joy. Every toast, every laugh, every dance felt like it was covering something rotten. Layla's mother kept glancing at her daughter's face, searching for comfort, but finding only exhaustion. When the music slowed, Fahad leaned close, his hand gripping her waist too tightly, and the sparkle in her eyes flickered out. Still, the guests cheered as they left, showering the couple with petals and blessings. Nobody knew they were sending Layla into her worst nightmare. By the next sunrise, her perfect wedding would turn into a crime scene that would shake the city to its core. The reception raged on like a dream soaked in money. Crystal chandeliers reflecting off champagne glasses, laughter echoing through the ballroom, and cameras capturing every picture-perfect moment. Layla glided through the crowd in her flowing gown, the jewels around her neck catching the light like tiny flames. Everyone said she looked radiant, but if you looked close, her smile was too practiced, her eyes distant. She was trying to hold it together, to keep up the illusion that she was living her fairy tale. Fahad followed her everywhere, his presence heavy, possessive, his gaze tracking her like a shadow that refused to let go. When she danced, the room cheered, but his jaw tightened each time another man offered congratulations or even dared to glance her way. He wasn't drunk, but there was a storm brewing behind those polished eyes. To the crowd, he was charming, a gentleman husband. But under the surface, his control was suffocating. Layla felt it in the way he squeezed her hand a little too hard, the way his smile faded the second cameras turned away. She was surrounded by hundreds of people and still felt completely alone. The music grew louder, and Layla tried to drown her fear in the rhythm. She laughed, posed for pictures, and acted the part of the happy bride. But as the night stretched on, the mask began to crack. The tension between them was almost visible, like static electricity humming in the air. When the final song played, Fahad leaned in, whispering something that made her face go pale. She forced a laugh, pretending it was nothing, but her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her veil. As the couple finally left for their private suite, the crowd erupted in cheers, tossing petals and blessings into the air. No one realized they were watching the last moments of Layla's life unfold, hidden beneath all that glitter and applause. Morning lights spilled into the hotel hallway, soft and golden, but inside Suite 709, everything was chaos. The silence was sharp, the kind that only exists after something terrible has happened. Around 7 a.m., a maid knocked on the door for housekeeping, only to find Fahad standing there, barefoot, his shirt wrinkled and smeared with something that looked like blood. His expression was blank, too calm, too hollow. He muttered something about an accident, about Layla falling in the bathroom, his voice flat and detached, as if he were describing a broken vase instead of a broken woman. When hotel security entered, the scene didn't match his story. The air smelled like spilled perfume and fear. The vanity mirror was cracked, shards scattered across the tile floor. The bathtub was half filled with murky water, streaked with pinkish stains. Layla lay nearby, still wearing parts of her wedding gown. Her makeup smeared down her cheeks like painted tears. The bruises on her arms and neck were too deliberate to be from a fall. The investigators who arrived tried to stay professional, but even they knew something was off the moment they saw her. By the time the police and paramedics showed up, Fahad had changed his clothes and started making phone calls to his father, to his lawyer, to anyone who could fix what had just happened. He kept repeating that it was an accident, that she slipped, that it wasn't his fault. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. News of the tragedy spread before noon. Headlines hit every social feed. Asterisk, Saudi bride dies on wedding night. Asterisk, it was sanitized, sterile, and polite. The word murder didn't appear anywhere, but everyone who saw those photos, the blood, the bruises, the broken glass, knew better. Layla hadn't fallen. Someone had made sure she would never stand again. Fahad's family moved faster than the morning headlines could catch up. Within hours, lawyers in designer suits flooded the hotel, ordering everyone to stay silent and handing out non-disclosure agreements like candy. The Al-Mataris were one of the most powerful families in Riyadh. Old money, deep connections, and enough influence to rewrite any story they didn't like. Their version was simple. Layla slipped in the bathroom, hit her head, and died instantly. No foul play, no scandal, just a tragic accident that would be buried along with her. But the evidence refused to stay quiet. The coroner's early report hinted at something darker: fractured ribs, defensive wounds, bruises too fresh and too deep to come from one fall. Someone had fought. Someone had lost. The hotel staff who'd seen the scene started disappearing, either transferred, paid off, or too scared to talk. The security footage from the hallway malfunctioned at the exact hour the incident happened, and the system logs were wiped clean the next morning. The cover-up wasn't sloppy. It was precise, surgical. Still, not everyone was willing to play along. Detective Khalid Mansour, known for being stubborn and clean in a city that rewarded silence, noticed the inconsistencies right away. The broken mirror, the torn veil, the blood pattern, it all screamed violence. He submitted his report, but it vanished before reaching the prosecutor's desk. Superiors told him to let it go, that it was a family matter. But Khalid couldn't shake the image of Layla's lifeless body, her wedding ring twisted around her swollen finger. Behind closed doors, money bought silence. News outlets received threats, social media accounts discussing the case mysteriously vanished, and the Al-Matari family mourned publicly with crocodile tears. The truth was sinking fast under the weight of power and privilege, but Khalid wasn't ready to let it drown. Months slipped by, and the case that once shocked the city faded into whispers. The world had moved on, but Detective Khalid Mansour hadn't. He spent nights sifting through reports that didn't add up and evidence that had mysteriously gone missing. Then, one sleepless evening, while digging through archived police records, he stumbled upon something that made his blood run cold. A sealed complaint filed by Layla herself just 2 weeks before her wedding. In it, she accused Fahad of physical abuse and death threats. She'd begged authorities to intervene, even requesting that the marriage be postponed. The file had been stamped, received, and then quietly buried under family discretion. Khalid knew what that meant. Someone high up had made sure it disappeared. The file was signed by an officer now retired under suspicious circumstances. Inside was a photo of Layla with faint bruises along her jawline, labeled as self-inflicted. But her written statement told the truth in heartbreaking detail. "He said he'll kill me if I ever embarrass him," she wrote. "My family says I should stay quiet. That's safer." Khalid copied the file and leaked it anonymously online. Within hours, the internet caught fire. Hashtags demanding justice for Layla spread across platforms like wildfire. News outlets that had once ignored the story suddenly wanted interviews. Women from across the region began sharing their own stories of abuse and silence, turning Layla into a symbol of truth buried by power. The Al-Matari family scrambled to control the damage, threatening lawsuits and censorship, but it was too late. Screens everywhere showed Layla's face, the beautiful bride who never got her happily ever after. For the first time, the narrative wasn't theirs to control. The secret they'd spent millions to bury was now exposed to millions more, and the ghost of Layla Al-Harbi had just begun to haunt them all. Before the case could reach the courtroom, everything fell apart. Fahad Al-Matari vanished like smoke. 1 week before his scheduled interrogation, he skipped a meeting with investigators and was never seen again. Rumors flew faster than the headlines could catch up. Some claimed he'd fled to London under a fake passport. Others whispered that his family had paid for a private jet out of the country hours after the warrant was issued. A few even suggested something darker, that he hadn't escaped at all, that his own family had handled him to protect their legacy. Whatever the truth was, Fahad's disappearance killed any chance of a fair trial. The case file went cold. The public outrage burned bright for weeks, but slowly dimmed as new scandals replaced it. The Al-Mataris issued a formal statement expressing their deep sorrow and urging people to stop spreading false stories. They funded charities in Layla's name, trying to paint themselves as grieving in-laws instead of silent accomplices. But Detective Khalid Mansour saw right through it. He tried to reopen the investigation multiple times, but each request was denied, stamped insufficient evidence. His superiors grew tired of his persistence and reassigned him to a minor department, essentially exile in uniform. Still, Khalid couldn't forget. He'd seen the photos, the bruises, the note, the truth hidden under luxury. Every time he passed the courthouse, he thought of the trial that never happened, the one that could have given Layla her justice. Instead, her story became legend, spreading through whispers, social media posts, and underground forums. Layla's name became a movement. Women painted murals, shared her photo, and used her story to speak about their own silence. But justice? It never came. Fahad was gone. The system had folded, and Layla's truth was left floating in limbo. Unsettled, unanswered, unforgettable.